Good morning, class 6. Let's start. We will be starting a new chapter, that is ratio and proportion. Ratio and proportion. Now we'll be speaking mainly about ratio today. Now what is this ratio? Ratio is basically required when to compare two quantities. When two quantities are compared, we represent that by ratio. What is the symbol of ratio? It is denoted by this. This is my symbol for ratio. Okay? And ratio is basically when we are applying the division method. That is, we are dividing one quantity by the other. That only represents the ratio, and it helps to compare the two quantities. For example, if I say in a class number of boys equals to 25 and girls equals to 20, right? And if I tell you to find the ratio of number of girls to number of boys. This is my given data, and I am telling you that find the ratio of the number of girls to the number of boys. Okay, you have to find the ratio. So we know that the number of girls is 20. This is 20. We know the ratio symbol is given as this. This symbol is known as is-to. This is symbol of ratio and it is known as is-to. Boy, what is the number? It is 25. So this is basically my ratio, 20:25. Now, if we write anything with is-to, that represents division. It is 20 divided by 25. That only represents a ratio. That's why we are saying it is division of one quantity by the other. Now, when we are writing like this, the top part, the upper part is called antecedent of a ratio, and this part is called consequent of a ratio. The upper part is antecedent and the lower part, that is the denominated part, is your consequent. Okay. Now what happens? We have to leave the ratio in the simplest form. In the simplest form means as it is a fraction. This 20 by 25, it represents a fraction. Okay. It's 20 upon 25. It is a fraction. And we have to express it or represent it in the simplest form. Simplest form means we have to check whether this 20 and 25 is divisible by any common number or not. So if we come to the table of 5, we know 5 4s are 20 and 5 5s are 25. So I can write this. So 5 4s are 20 and 5 5s are 25. So this is my simple form. Why it is a simple form? Because 4 and 5, they are not divisible by a given number. So this is my ratio of number of girls to the number of boys in that class. Right? That is 4:5. So this is basically your ratio. How to find out the ratio? That is, we are comparing the quantities. Here what are the two quantities? Here the quantities are the girls and the boys. Right? So basically this comparison is known as ratio, that is by division method. Now we need to remember, when we are doing the comparison between the quantities have to be in the same units. They have to be of same type. Like, suppose if I say that the ratio between your, if I say 2 meter and 3 centimeter. If I tell you find the ratio between 2 meter and 3 centimeter. It is possible. Why? Because 2 meter and 3 centimeter, they represent length, they represent distance. You can easily convert centimeter to meter or meter to centimeter, and then we can find out the ratio. Right? So if I get this kind of question, I find out the ratio between 2 meter and 3 centimeter. So what do? I convert meter to centimeter. We know 1 meter equals to 100 centimeter. So 2 meter. So we are going to multiply 2 into 100 divided by 3. 3 centimeter. This is also in centimeter, this is also in centimeter. Means these two quantities, initially they were not of same units. Then we converted them, then we can do the ratio. This is 200 by 3, or we can write 200 is to 3. Right. This is only the form because these two numbers, that is both antecedent and consequent, they are not divisible by a common number. So this will be the ratio. But if I tell that find the ratio between 2 meter and 45 minutes. If I tell you that find out the ratio between 2 meter and 45 minutes, is it possible? It is not possible. Why? Because this one, 45 minutes represents time, and 2 meter it represents length or distance. Right, and we know that this length cannot be converted to time, or time cannot be converted to length. That's why this ratio, we cannot find out the ratio. Ratio cannot be found, right? Because these two quantities, this quantity and this quantity, they represent different types, because this represents either length or distance, and this one, as it is in minutes, it represents time. So this quantity we cannot find out, we cannot do the ratio because these two are different quantities. So ratio, we always have to remember the quantities have to be of same type. They have to be of same type. Like previously that I did about meters and centimeters, we can easily convert meter to centimeter or centimeter to meter. So that time we can find out the ratio. So this is an important part, that is ratio of quantities to be determined, they have to be in the same units. Though ratio has no unit, ratio is unitless. Ratio has no unit. Okay. Now next we come inverse ratio. Inverse ratio is what? It represents a ratio when antecedent and consequent of one ratio is equal to consequent and antecedents of the other ratio. That time the two ratios will be inverse of each other. Like for example, if I write 5 by 2, this is my one ratio, and if I write 2 by 5, this is my second ratio. Now here you see this is my antecedent, this is my consequent, and here this is my antecedent, this is my consequent. So if this is ratio 1, this is ratio 2, what can we say? Antecedent of first ratio is equal to consequent of the second ratio, and consequent of the first ratio is equal to antecedent of the second ratio. So if we get this kind of arrangements, and those two ratios, they are known as inverse ratio. And we also need to know this always, ratio and its inverse, product of ratio and its inverse, ratio and its inverse is equals to 1. Is if this is my ratio, and if I take the inverse means just I have to take the reverse one, right? I have to change the antecedents and the consequence, or I have to change the numerator by the denominator, like that. So then the product will always be equal to 1. Okay. Now we have the two types of ratio, simple ratio and compound ratio. Simple ratio, compound ratio. Now simple ratio, what? It represents a ratio. It represents a ratio between two quantities of same type. Simple form means, for example, if I take this ratio, 2:3, 4:5, 7:3. These are my simple ratio. Means this ratios further, they cannot be further simplified, or they are not further divisible. Then that one will represent my simple ratio. Like if I would have written 14:16, then I have to further convert it to simple ratio, because this will be your 2 7s are 14, this is 2 8s is 16. So 7:8 is my simple ratio. Means I have to take the simple form, okay? And compound ratio is what? It represents a ratio when antecedent of a given ratio is equal to products of antecedents of two or more ratios, and the consequent of that ratio is also equal to the product of consequence of those ratios, right? That represents the compound ratio. For example, if I say, if these are my ratios, 2:3, 4:5, 7:8. These are my 3 simple ratios. Now from here I have to find out the compound ratio. So what is my compound ratio? We told that compound ratio, antecedent will be equal to the product of antecedents of the given ratio. So here, which are my antecedents? Obviously the first part, the top part. This is my antecedent. So 2 into 4 into 7 is 2. Consequence 3 into 5 into 8. So this is my compound ratio. Okay, I have to multiply the entire thing. That represents a compound ratio. Okay. Now, types of simple ratio. Types of simple ratio. Under simple ratio, we have 3 types. First one, simple ratio types. First one, we have ratio of greater inequality. Greater inequality means what? Means the antecedent will be greater than the consequent. If we get that kind of ratio, that will be your ratio of greater inequality. For example, if I write 8/7, that is 8:7, or I can write 6:5, right? Or I can write your 3:2. These are my ratio of greater inequality. Why? Because the antecedent is greater than the consequent, right? Next, we have ratio of equality. Ratio of equality, where both antecedent and your consequence will be equal. For example, if I write 5:5, 5:5, or if I write anything of this sort, right? The antecedent and consequence will be absolutely equal. Then we have ratio of lesser inequality. Ratio of lesser inequality. Lesser inequality is exactly the opposite, where the antecedent will be lesser than the consequent. Example, we will be having 2:3. Then we have 7:9, etc. So these are my few types of your simple ratios. Okay. So that's it, class 6. Thank you.